You know what? I love The Lion King, from that iconic first to the big final. It is an undeniable masterwork. Now, is it total perfection? Well, pretty close, though just look at this. One moment Nala's feet go in the water, and then the next shot they're back out again. Egregious. But, all jokes aside, it is without a doubt one of the top handful of greatest animated movies ever made. So, if we're making a complete history of animation, one title at a time, where better to start than right here in 1994?
The idea is, from the comfort of your armchair, you'll choose whatever video you want, and it'll be played down your phone line to your own TV.
Wow, 1994 was a long time ago, huh? At the time, Disney were riding high, slap bang in the middle of their famous Renaissance, the huge success of The Little Mermaid breaking them out of the 80s commercial slump, where it started to look like they'd forever play second fiddle to Don Bluth. Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin followed and were huge hits and amazing films, and let's not forget The Rescuers Down Under got in there too. A Nightmare Before Christmas also came out in 1993, though it was too spooky for Disney at the time, so they released it through Touchstone. So yes, Disney were sitting very pretty at this point, with multiple smash hits under their collective belts, and not a whiff of generative AI in sight just yet, which sets the stage for The Lion King. I feel like one of the two little tidbits of info everyone knows about The Lion King is that at the time it was thought of as the lesser project to work on, and the top animators all wanted to be on the prestige project, Pocahontas, and indeed there were multiple animators stepping into that role for the first time on TLK, though I feel like there's a tendency to exaggerate this story into it being like every single competent animator going off to paint with all the colors of the wind, while they drag people in off the streets to animate Pumbaa on their first day of the job. No, there's a youthful energy to The Lion King that's great, but these were still highly experienced professionals at the top of their game, which, you can tell by looking at their work. The other tidbit, of course, being that Disney totally ripped off Kimba the White Lion, or Django the Taite as we call it over here. Or increasingly after one very angry fellow made several 10-hour videos on the subject, that this is a total myth, because, most of those comparison images of the two feature shots from a Kimba film made after The Lion King to play up the similarities. And again, I think there's a middle ground to be found here. Is it even close to as much of a rip-off as those comparisons make it seem? Not even the teensiest bit close to that. But do I, on balance of probability, think Kimba was used in reference material, potentially as a starting point, having some influence on the movie at its earliest stages? I think it's pretty likely. I mean, Matthew Broderick thought they were just doing a remake.
I kept going around the city telling everybody I'm playing Kimba.
Co-director Roger Allers had spent 2 years in Tokyo working with Japanese animators on the Little Nemo project, so would be familiar with the greats. And there's that development art with a little white lion cub. Early drafts of the screenplay were called King of the Jungle, which is very close to the translation of Django the Taite, Jungle Emperor or Great Emperor, and in case you didn't notice, the time Simba's in the jungle is the time he isn't a king. And of course, Roy Disney Jr. sent a fan a letter talking about Kimba's mom. The degree of influence has indeed become a bit of an urban myth that, sure, totally deserves lengthy debunking videos, and similarities are mostly very superficial. But I also don't believe Kimba was never even raised, and everyone was totally oblivious. Disney were certainly looking east at the time, and they openly acknowledge anime's influence on The Rescuers Down Under. Even if Kimba really was on the table as a starting point, though, it wasn't much more than that. A place to build from at an inchoate stage. Far more of an influence here was, of course, Mr. Willie Shakespeare, because this is essentially a retelling of Hamlet, after all, with a lot more of the cast making it to the end, I grant you.
Before I came aboard, it was described as Bambi in Africa with Hamlet thrown in, so Bamblet.
Now, I'm not going to give a plot synopsis here. All of you know the story of The Lion King, come on now. And anyway, I don't like it when review channels just recap the plot with some wisecracks along the way. In brief, talking lions are treated as benevolent monarchs until the king's brother betrays and kills him, takes the throne, messes up the kingdom, and then the young prince returns from exile and violence solves everything. Neat. Also, there's a drought when the baddie's in charge, but the heavens opened when the king returns. very lucky with the old pathetic fallacy. No, that's what it's called when the weather fits the mood. Yes, really, pathetic fallacy. I'm not making it up. Anyway, yeah, that's as much summary as you'll get out of me, because,
This video is a transformative work of commentary and in no way can be interpreted as a substitute for watching the copyrighted work in its entirety.
Young Simba, the wise Rafiki, Mufasa, and the evil Scar. 7 toys in all, one in every kid's meal, only at Burger King, where the Lion King rules. The Burger King Kids Club, it's a cool place.
The Lion King is the result of the confluence of so many things that came together in the early 90s in just the right way. We're super lucky we got it when we did. The movie is a timeless classic, but it's also very 90s. In techniques, in writing, and especially in humor. Aladdin really set the tone for slinging in whatever references you like, huh? And that's how these animals living out in the savannah know what dressing in drag is, and about It's a Small World.
It's a small world after all.
No, anything but that.
But Aladdin's success hadn't yet made Disney want to market every movie on its star voice actors, and Nathan Lane's Timon really isn't just trying to be another genie like what happens in so many later Disney movies. It's the double act that really works here, and it definitely helped that Lane and Ernie Sabella were in the recording booth together to sound off one another, rather than recording in isolation. It's also a pretty 90s thing that everything doesn't need explaining, like I feel it would have to be today. Like, sure, Mufasa and Scar are brothers. We absolutely assume biological brothers. We didn't have this backstory to think about yet.
What did you say about my brother?
So, who shall we cast for these biological brothers? How about the big black American guy who does Darth Vader's voice, and that skinny, rakish Brit from the Evelyn Waugh thingy? How could these two ever possibly be brothers? Who cares? They both have awesome voices. There's a freewheeling quality to a lot of the decisions made for The Lion King that are just great, and I wouldn't change for the world. And I don't feel like they would happen today. I mean, Mufasa seems to exist, at least in part, to explain away that sort of thing, even though nobody asked. The Lion King may also be the very pinnacle of the sadly more or less deceased art form of the major feature-length 2D Western animation. Sorry, fixed. I don't think you've brought it back. There'd be a fair few more years of pretty amazing stuff from Disney, Hunchback, Hercules, Mulan, Stitch, but the spectacle and beauty of The Lion King is for me the zenith. It's incredibly precise when it needs to be, and that shot where we pan around Mufasa and Simba will never fail to make the hairs stand up on the back of my little lupine neck. But it's also very loose and playful sometimes, and can be technically imprecise in a way I think is full of character and charm. They really go to town with this squash and stretch at times. The character designs are recognizably Disney and yet highly distinct, and for my money, the most appealing and attractive of any Disney movie. And no, despite using this funny little avatar for myself, I do not mean that in the Eddie Redmayne way.
Look at her face, she's so sweet. She can sing really well. That's wrong.
While I don't think it dates the movie or anything, young Simba is such a 90s kid. That delicate balance of bratty and likable we don't really get anymore. Adorable design, too. And Scar is, of course, one of the best of Disney's villains. The best of the bunch, actually, in my view. More Iago than Claudius in our little Hamlet retelling, and all the better for it. Obviously, much more Iago than Iago. He's a genuinely monstrous individual, rolling up fratricide with regicide. And yet he manages to be so charismatic and likable anyway.
I'm surrounded by idiots.
He's just like me. And one thing I really like about how Scar is written is that it's really his big mouth that's his undoing at multiple stages of the story. I mean, look, if he didn't have to ham it up with a grieving Simba before setting the hyenas to kill him, and he'd just shut up and done the deed himself, he'd be safe. Well, from his nephew, at least. And here, if he hadn't felt the need to gloat to Simba and tell him the truth, Simba wouldn't have gotten the rage buff he needed to pull out his unlikely Uno Reverso. And even here in his final scene, if he'd just kept his mouth shut before, when he lost and hadn't blamed things on the hyenas, they probably would have helped him instead of being the ones to finish him off. Well, probably. There's the whole creepy scene where he drives off Nala too, but hey, that's only in cut animatics and the musical, so we can't really count that here. But I do like how at so many turns, Scar's undoing is not knowing when to shut up. So yeah, whether or not the idea derives in part from Tezuka or other animal stories going way back to Aesop, who told stories about Lion Kings 2,600 years ago, the decision to set this story in such a spectacular location helped so much. I treasure my copy of The Art of the Lion King and the spectacular concept art therein. It's kind of remarkable how much unused development work there is behind this movie. So much was created, considered, and discarded before the protean mass was eventually molded into the final beautiful shape. There are numerous treatments for the concept going back to 1988, and right up until the original co-director George Scribner left the project in 1992, he wanted it to be in the style of a nature documentary with no singing. Producer Don Hahn likes to say the complete outline for the film was written in 2 days in his office, with the storyboarders and the Beauty and the Beast directors, but that strikes me as a bit of self-mythologizing. Co-writers Irene Mecci and Jonathan Roberts hadn't even joined the team at this point after all, and I do think that their contributions probably did affect the complete outline, at least to some extent. It's also clear from all the cut scenes that made it as far as animatics with full voicing that they were kinda making it up as they went along, with storyboarders, especially head of story Brenda Chapman, who went on to direct The Prince of Egypt and Brave, putting together numerous scenes that didn't end up making it into the movie. Arguably, this is a pretty impractical way to get a coherent story together, but it does allow for plenty of creativity.
They'd get to a certain point and they'd look at a drawing or a scene and go, hang on, this could all be different, and then they'd sort of like, in the front of you, they'd pull all that stuff off the walls and start redesigning the story, basically.
I don't think it's an approach that always works, and in many ways I think it's lucky the final version turned out as cohesive as it did, though of course you are expected to just hand-wave away lots of little details, like who Nala's father was, or whether these talking prey animals beg for mercy as the predators dismember them. Whew, talking around that subject got super awkward in The Lion Guard, where the cast go on epic quests and apparently just don't ever eat. I know that not everyone rates The Lion King as among the great works of animation, but I really don't think anybody can deny its beauty. And the movie isn't just a feast for the eyes, it's also a feast for the ears. I wouldn't necessarily think that Elton John was the perfect choice for songs, but taking his melodies and giving them epic instrumentation and powerful belting vocals worked unforgettably well. And what he undeniably brings is range. You know, there's a lot of difference between I Just Can't Wait to Be King and Can You Feel the Love Tonight? But for me, it's Hans Zimmer who really steals the show here. The haunting melody that would be adapted into Shadowlands for the Broadway show is just so achingly beautiful.
I'm not who I used to be.
Remember who you are. You are my son and the one true king. Remember who you are.
Add in the unforgettable, energetic, heartfelt choral work of Le Bohème, and you have probably the best soundtrack to any animated movie ever made. Speaking of the music, another thing that it feels like everybody kinda sorta knows with half-baked information is that Jim Cummings sung part of Be Prepared, the iconic villain song that Jeremy Irons does so deliciously with. Did Jim Cummings sing part of it? I think that's pretty definitively confirmed now. But it's crazy how many people have run with the idea that Irons' voice gave out singing, "You won't get a sniff without me," and Cummings just had to take over from there, as if these recordings are like one take done live, and Irons got yanked off stage at that point with one of those curtain hooks so that Cummings could take over. That's not how these recordings work. I'm sure they both did multiple takes, and despite people saying they can just tell from the timbre or from the vibes that Cummings takes over right here, I'm pretty sure it's a patched together Frankenstein job of different takes, and the only parts I'm completely definite are Cummings are the big high notes, you know, the parts Irons notably avoids when he sang it live at the Hollywood Bowl. Yes, Cummings does a fantastic impression of Irons, but you know who else sounds like Jeremy Irons? Yes, Jeremy Irons. Aside from that deliciously devilish British voice and the wonderful dulcet booms of James Earl Jones, we also get pitch-perfect performances from the likes of Nathan Lane, Whoopi Goldberg, Rowan Atkinson, and Cheech Marin, all of whom don't just turn in comedic performances, but in every single case get to show range and give us serious moments too. The kids are just fantastic, and though Matthew Broderick seems like a kind of strange casting decision, the slightly soft delivery he gives the older Simba ends up matching the slacker-turned-returning fighter brilliantly, and I end up not being able to picture Ferris at all when I hear Simba. Though one kinda odd fact is that older Simba is introduced singing, and that's not even Broderick's voice. The singing performance was done by Joseph Williams, one of the singers from Toto. So the audience's first impression of the adult Simba actually falls to him, the singing performer, and he packs a lot of personality into that first line.
It means no worries for the rest of your day.
When we recorded it, I sang, but they cut me out and used they used a different person.
Really, I can't praise and glaze The Lion King enough, and there's very little I dislike. I'm not a big fan of all the fart jokes for Pumbaa, and it's always bothered me just a little bit that Rowan Atkinson, brilliant as he is, doesn't sound like this is a thought getting cut off.
Rather a long way to go, young master, if you think.
Tiny little thing. The story can, to modern audiences, be read in ways that are not super politically correct. When you see the fall of the Pride Lands happens when the revolutionary opens the borders to an immigrant population with distinctly non-waspy speaking voices, only for them to ruin the place. I'm just saying, Nazis are bad, mind you. And I also have some unresolved childhood trauma from getting this old video game and having to deal with this gorilla. Stupid gorilla. But The Lion King looms large over not just the 90s, but the history of animation, as a confluence of everything just lining up as perfectly as a battalion of goose-stepping hyenas. One of the great works, and one I will never tire of watching over and over again. 1994 was the perfect time for The Lion King to happen. And while there are many feature films that are more narratively complex, or technically ambitious, or lean more into art house qualities, there's really no denying that The Lion King is one of the great landmarks of animation. If somehow you've never seen it, I can't recommend it highly enough. Alright, that's all for today, and I will see you guys again next time.